explained that there are many different incarnations and expansions, and we can read in various shastras. The Goswamis have written many literatures, Jiva Goswami and other, and in regard to the different types of expansions, Svamsa, Amsa. Svamsa means the full, Amsa means the part. And some are on the level of the Vishnu, they're Vishnu Tattva, they're direct expansions, just like Balaram. Balaram is direct expansion, then he expands again, and then all come from Balaram. All the expansions actually come from Balaram on that side, and from Radharani on the other side. So from Balaram comes the quadruple, the Chatuvyuha in Dwarka, and then from that Sankarshan in Dwarka comes Lord Narayan. From Lord Narayan comes another Chatuvyuha. From the Sankarshan there comes the Mahavishnu, so on and so forth. So all the expansion. Now these are direct expansions. They're on the level of Vishnu. They're on the level of Vishnu. So all different types of expansions. And then there's other expansions who are Jiva Tattva, just like you and I, Jiva Tattva, living entities. And but we're Viminamsa. There's Amsa, there's Svamsa, original, and Amsa, expanded. And then there's Vibhinamsa, we're expanded living entities, but we're very marginal, we're very small. We're not like on the level of Vishnu, we're on the Jivas. But some of those Jivas are empowered, and Shaktivesh avatar. So this is a little bit technical, if I'm not losing you here, but interesting because there's various expansions and then there's incarnations. Now, incarnations or avatars are explained as having specific purposes. And sometimes the incarnations can be even Jiva Tattva, like Shaktivesh avatar. Like avatar can be Shaktivesh avatar, can be a Jiva, or can be Vishnu also. And it means that they're empowered. Avatars or incarnations are specific for certain functions and tasks. They've got a more specific leela or something like that. They have to perform their teachings, show by austerity, show how to do the meditation. So the incarnations or the avatars are these types of expansions. But when they expanded for these specific purposes, they're known as incarnations or they're known as avatars. Some of them are Vishnu Tattva and some of them are Jiva Tattva, Shaktivesh avatar. Vibhinamsa, Amsa, Vibhinamsa, the living entity. So there are living entities who are very, very empowered, act practically on the level of the Supreme, act like Vishnu Tattva, being empowered by the Supreme Lord himself. But majority, especially in the Kali Yuga, is living entities who are conditioned souls. Conditioned souls. And I was reading with interest in the previous purport where Prabhupada said to, he wrote that Vibhishana, who was in the Ram Leela, Ravana's brother, who became the king, and Lord Ram had installed him as the king after Ravana was killed. Vibhishana became, Lord Ram installed him as the king. And Vibhishana was always devoted, you know, we remember in the Ram Leela that he was always preaching to his brother against, kidnapping or keeping Sita, hand Sita back, surrender to Ram. So Vibhishana was always like that. He was devoted to the Supreme Lord. And Ravana, and actually, he was devoted from practically from the beginning of his life. Ravana didn't appreciate it because he was opposed to Vishnu. And so Vibhishana, the Prabhupada explains here that he was very loyal to Lord Rama. And being very loyal to Lord Ram, he said that he became great friends and had great loyalty. And he dedicated, he said he would follow all the laws of kingship and all the laws of being a devotee. But if he broke any of those laws or broke the friendship, Prabhupada says he with Lord Ramchandra, he said, I will become a Brahmin or a king in Kali Yuga. Means in a disparaging way. Prabhupada explained it like this, indicating that the Brahmanas and the kings in the Kali Yuga are in a very wretched condition. Actually, there are no kings or no real kings or brahmanas in this age of Kali. So in their absence, the whole world is in a chaotic condition and always in distress. So interesting point. So he could, it was like he cursed himself, let me be, if I break my friendship with you, Lord Ram, before I go against religious principles, may I take birth in the Kali Yuga as a Brahmin or a king in the Kali Yuga, because actually it's a very wretched position. So he was like cursing himself. In other words, he had no intention, but he said, if by chance, then I will become a king or a Brahmana in the Kali Yuga. So monarchy is abolished in Kali Yuga because the kings themselves are subjected to the influence of Kali Yuga. But here we see that Maharaj Gaya was not like that. Of course, his incarnation, direct expansion, an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You could say his avatar and Vishnu Tattva, and he's appeared in the role of a king. We have to remember that these expansions, incarnations of the Supreme Lord, they accept roles in the world, and he exhibited, just like Lord Ram himself exhibited all the good qualities or all the qualities of a good king. So Lord Ram himself, here we have Maharaj Gaya, who exhibited such wonderful qualities. And he gave full protection. It's interesting, these verses leading up to the ones we read today. He gave full protection. I mean, these are the duties of the king. And there's a few still kings around in different countries around the world. Sultans, you know, you have in the Islam, you have sultans who are like a king. And in some countries, the king, also kings. Some of them are more ceremonial kind of roles. In Europe, for example, there's a few kings and queens still, but they're more ceremonial. But in the past, they were actually the heads of the government. They were the heads of the government, and they were responsible to oversee the function of government. Whereas, you know, in the Western role, I think more in the Arab countries, the sultans or the sheikhs or the kings are directly governing and they're overseeing the government. But in many countries, it's more a ceremonial role, as I said. So, but in these days of it's been described here, he had the responsibility, and he had his ministers, and he had his Brahminical advisors. There were all sorts of levels. And we see here how he gave full protection. Some of the descriptions he gave full protection and security. Security. This is called Poshana. This is in the previous verse number 7, Poshana. So these are all just like when Maharaj Yudhisthira, after the battle of Kurukshetra, he became very despondent, and he went back to Hastinapur. Everyone went back to Hastinapur, and he went in his room and he became very despondent. He blamed himself for so many being killed on the battlefield, and he was thinking, just to install me as the king, as the emperor, so many soldiers and so many have been killed. So he became very despondent, and he stayed in his room. And there's one description that he wouldn't come out of his room. He wouldn't come out of his room. Many came in and said, now this whole battle has been fought, and now it's time to do your duty. Many went in one after the other, but he wasn't shaken out of his despondency. Bhimsen came in and spoke very strongly. Actually, Yudhisthira actually suggested that, no, I don't want to be the king. Let Bhimsen be the king. He actually said, let him be the king. And so Bhimsen came and spoke very strongly. I always remember this one section. He said that you have won the battle, but you appear to be losing the war. And that war is the war with your own mind and senses. Your own mind and senses is causing you to become very despondent. But actually, you're duty bound to perform the functions of the king. So shake off your lethargy. You know, I always remember these were strong words from. And actually, Ulysses was moved by the words of Bhimsena, but he wasn't fully convinced. It was Krishna who suggested, "Why don't we go and see Bhishma?" Bhishma was still on the battlefield. I was just in Kurukshetra at the start of the year, and very beautiful place. They've almost finished the new temple there, which is nearby the Jyotisar, where Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. And we have a very wonderful temple coming up. They told me there that they're hoping to open it next year. So at that, also nearby there's a place where Bhishma, the Bhishma Kund, where Bhishma was lying on the bed of arrows. So he was waiting for the auspicious time when the sun travels in the north to leave the world, and he was there for quite some time. Even though he had all those arrows, still somehow or other he was just lying there. And then they all came there and on Krishna's advice. And so Yudhisthira went forward and asked him, and Bhishma gave him really incredible instructions on the duties of a king. And some of it's there in the Srimad Bhagavatam. I think in the first canto, one chapter, Bhishma Dev's instructions to Yudhisthira. And so it was more elaborated in the Mahabharata. But he gave these very valuable instructions, even though he was lying on a bed of arrows. And you would think you'd be a lot of pain. But somehow or other, he spoke very clear, very concise, and he actually convinced Yudhisthira what the duties, and Yudhisthira went back and took up the position of king. But these kings in the ancient times were not just elected kings just like that. They were the sons of kings, they were princes, and they were trained. They were trained in education about kingly duties. They were trained in all sorts of areas of expertise. And so we read here that to give protection and security is called poshana. So obviously, this was an area of training that was given to the young prince who was going to become the king. It was an area of training. Protection means if someone's attacking from the outside, it's the duty of the king to give the protection to the citizens. They can't just run away. And the kings in ancient times, they were right there on the battlefield, giving protection and give security to the citizens. And Prabhupada explained, personal property would not be disturbed by undesirable elements. There will be sufficient food. This is called poshana, sufficient food. In other words, sufficient food, protection, security. He would sometimes distribute gifts to satisfy them. This is called prinana. He would sometimes call meetings and speak with the citizens in a very sweet way. This is called upalalana. He would give them instruction on how to become first-class citizens. This is called anusashana. Such were the characteristics of the King Gai's royal order. He followed. So, in other words, these were areas they were trained in. You could get training how to do these things, how to speak nicely to so many different types of people. This is someone can learn just by practical experience, but when you're in an executive position, you have to meet all manner of people. And so how to speak with different types of people, it's actually a part of the education of the king, education of the prince, giving in charity and so on and so forth. And not only that, but he was a very strict householder. He observed all the rules and regulations of the Grihastha life, performed sacrifices, which is mentioned in today's verse. He gave all facilities to the citizens, and he executed his duties. He became such a strict devotee that in the end, he would be able to go back home, back to God. Of course, he's an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of God himself. So it's mentioned here that even though he was in the position of the king, he would always give respect to others. He was never proud. And nor was he anxious to rule the kingdom. In other words, there are some people that they're so ambitious. They're so ambitious. They've got to get power, and they have this driving ambition. And when they get the power, they want more power. And so things they couldn't do before, now they can do. They get a taste of it and they want more and more. So this is not a good quality for someone who's actually in the position of overseeing the affairs of the whole country or many kingdoms. Like Maharaj Yudhisthira was the emperor, and other kings were subordinate to him. So it's not that, and we see how he was despondent. He didn't want to, Yudhisthira Maharaj didn't want to become the king. So let Bhima become the king. But he did it, and he was convinced and to do that duty, especially by Bhishma Day. It's to be overly ambitious is not really a quality of a Vaishnava, in that, especially and here in regard to a king, one should not be overly anxious to rule the kingdom. Going in and ruling and conquering and more and more and more, but doing your duty. And he was always in full Brahman realization, therefore he was always jubilant. He did not experience material lamentation. So when you're in transcendental consciousness, of course, then you become more and more free from the effects of the modes of material nature. So Prabhupada, we just read in the Prabhupada Lilamrita, where Prabhupada answered the question to Bhagavat in regard to the modes of nature. He said, just like you're in a boat, and that boat is the boat of transcendental knowledge. So you're in transcendence, but sometimes when you're in the water going to the final destination, the waves, there's some waves coming in there rocking the boat. So they could, sometimes you feel, even though you're going to the goal, sometimes because you're just not reached the goal, you're on the path, sometimes you feel a bit of rocking. It's a very excellent example, very excellent example. You feel the rocking, but then Prabhupada added, I noted this, that Prabhupada added, but if you become a very expert steerer of the boat, then even the rocking, you'll be able to get through it. You'll be able to get through the rough waves if you become expert. So you have to become expert. And how to become expert? You have to be enthusiastic, and Prabhupada added again, you have to be patient, you have to be all determined and confident. So many things. You have to develop all these qualities. So all these things are very nicely explained by our acharyas, Rupa Goswami and other acharyas. So to do your duty, if you become unattached to your position and see it as a duty, and as devotees, we see it as a service. We are rendering service to the devotees. The position, whatever it is, it's where we become attached to rendering service to the devotees. This is the important thing. And if you remain fixed in that, then automatically one will be freed from the effects of the dualities of the world. So he was totally qualified. And coming to today's verse, he would perform all kinds of Vedic rituals. This goes to this point about this Poshana, that he will get full protection and security and undesirable elements. When you perform rituals and yajnas to please the devas, ultimately to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then everything will be provided very nicely. And so this is one of the functions of the king, to make sure, and it seems to be, they would have, being the king, he would organize these gigantic ceremonies and festivals, gigantic. Sometimes we can do a small yajna at someone's home, or maybe in the temple or something like that. But the kings would organize these huge affairs. I remember when we installed, in Mayapur, they installed the Panchatattva, and they had 1,008 yajnasalas going on in a tent outside where the Panchatattva Pavilion Hall is. On the other side, outside there, they had, as part of this whole ceremony of installing Panchatattva, they had these, the yajnas were going on. And 1,000, no, maybe not 1,000, maybe 108. 108 yajnas were going on, chanting auspicious Purusha Shukta and all the prayers and everything, pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is one of the duties of the king. He was very highly intelligent. Highly intelligent. You have to be highly intelligent to accept a big position like king, leader, and this intelligence. And some, they were born to good parents, so it's a high birth, and high intelligence is considered the result of the previous good actions. So these living entities would come and take birth in these royal families, and they would have this good intelligence. They would have all these good qualities. So he was highly intelligent, expert in studying the Vedic literatures. So it's obvious here that he would take time. And generally the kings would have recitals. They would get the brahmanas and they would recite to the king. And he would listen to that. And then he would also study himself. So he was expert in studying the Vedic literature. So the brahmanas would come, especially for the king. You read this in Mahabharata, you read it in Ramayana, that they would recite from different shastras or tell stories and give explanations. The kings would ask questions. So the kings would put aside time to do that. Put aside time to do it. And he maintained religious principles, possessed all kinds of opulence, and he was a leader amongst gentlemen and a servant of the devotees. He is a leader amongst gentlemen. He was very, very actual gentleman. Sometimes you read some story about, this gentleman went and, robbed the store. You can't be much of a gentleman. Or this gentleman went and had a fight with another one. You can't be much of a gentleman. Supposed to be, I guess it's a British term, a gentleman. Okay, it's a British term. And so, so it means gentleman, if you take it literally, gentleman. But Gaia was actually a gentleman. But at the same time, when there was some punishment due to some misconduct or some very heinous activity, he would out of duty have to do that as well. But generally speaking, he was always a gentleman. He was a leader amongst the gentlemen. He had to be a leader and a servant of the devotees. He was a plenary expansion. Here it's mentioned gigantic ritualistic ceremonies. And so in today's verse, in what's written today in number 10, and very interesting here that the kings would be have ceremonies, and in those ceremonies, the king, would be bathed. And here we read that Maharaj Daksha, the daughters of Maharaj Daksha, many would come, and in those times, sometimes the devas would come. Now Maharaj Daksha's daughters were married to different devas or rishis. So they were very elevated souls, Daksha's daughters. And here some of them are named Shraddha, Maitri, and Daya. So here the translation is the chaste and honest daughters such as Shraddha. So obviously there were many more there. So it must have been some big ceremony was going on, and the king was sitting and he was getting some sort of abhisheka, which was happened just like we do abhisheka for the deities, or we do abhisheka for Prabhupada, or something like that in the temples. So the kings in the past would get abhisheka. So many would attend and they would take part in the bathing ceremony of the king. The king would usually sit there with the queen. The king and the queen would sit there and they would get bathed. So here it is said that these daughters, specifically mentioned here, that these daughters, very exalted, gave their blessings and bathed him with sanctified water like the Ganga. They were very satisfied by Maharaj Gaia, and the earth was very satisfied. Here the example of the cow coming and delivering milk as if her calf was there. And Papa says this is an example. In other words, Maharaj Gaia was able to derive all benefits from the earth and thus satisfy the desires of the citizens. However, he personally had no desire. So when someone is doing all the functions nicely, then the devas become happy. And the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes happy. Give the blessings. Prabhupada makes a point of mentioning that here, that unless the king or ruler is blessed by authorities, he cannot rule the citizens very satisfactorily. So we need, we're not all power unto ourselves. We get in these positions We see the karmis because they're conditioned by so many materialistic qualities, greed, lust, anger, all these things. They get power and they become more puffed up and arrogant. They become so when someone becomes more puffed up and arrogant and conceited and so on, then the citizens become unhappy, and they can't really rule satisfactorily. This is a point that Prabhupada makes. Unless a king or ruler is blessed by authorities, so the authorities are not going to bless the king if he's all puffed up, arrogant, lusty, and greedy, and angry all the time. This is the situation. So this is a strong point. Through the good qualities of the ruler, the citizens become very happy and well qualified. So this is all about Maharaj Gaya, how everyone was benefited by his position as the ruler, his position as a devotee, and he gave all respects to any devotees. He was a great personality, very rare soul, very rare soul. All right, so I'll stop there. I'll read this again. All the chaste and honest daughters of Maharaj Daksha, such as Shraddha, Maitri, and Daya, whose blessings were always effective, bathed Maharaj Gaya with sanctified water. Indeed, they were very satisfied with Maharaj Gaya. Planet Earth personified came as a cow, and as though he saw a cow, she delivered milk profusely when she saw all the good quality of Maharaj Gaya. In other words, Maharaj Gaya was able to deliver all benefits from the earth and thus satisfy the desires of the citizens. However, he personally had no desire. Very rare soul. Has anyone got any question or comment? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, are they what? Are they?
Incarnations and expansions, are they interchangeable terms? Or are they the same?
They can be, but there are specific differences, as I said. That the incarnations, the expansions can be just in generally, Prabhupada one time explained avatar, one who descends and comes in the universe. He actually gave that definition. One who descends, avatar means one who descends and comes to this world. Expansion can just be in the spiritual world. Just like the Chatuvyuha, Balaram's expanded, Aniruddha, Pradyumna, and then the Narayan, all the different expansions of Vishnu in the spiritual world. They don't descend, they stay there. So these are expansions. But when the expansion descends to this world, he is known as an avatar. When he comes into the world, they may go to different universes also. So then they're avatar, then they're known as avatars. So in one sense, it's interchangeable, but in another sense, it's not interchangeable. When you say avatar, that means the one who's descended. It's not exactly expansion, but they're expansions also. Yeah. Very good question. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol.
Question online, sorry. Is it correct?
I have to quick, otherwise the questions are over.
Yeah. Just came through. Were Daksha's daughters contemporaries of Maharaj Gaya? Daksha were Daksha's daughters contemporaries of Maharaj Gaya?
Obviously. Daksha is descendant of Maharaj Gaya is descendant of Maharaj Gaya is? Maharaj Gaya is descendant of Priyavrata, which is significant. But Daksha is descendant of Prabhupada, but Maharaj Gaya is descendant of Priyavrata. Yes, but I mean, the question is about the contemporaries. Yeah, so I mean, these are beings that live for a long time. They're married to demigods, so they live for a long time. And so they were able to come and obey the Maharaj Gaya. So obviously they're contemporaries. They were living, they were also living. They don't live in the vicinity, but they came specifically for the ceremony of the Abhisheka. And as far as Uttanapada and Priyavrata, I mean, they're brothers. And there's Swayambhu and Manu. There's a Daksha appeared at different times also. And he came in that line. That's for his second birth. Originally, of course, Daksha was the son of Brahma, but then he got killed by Shiva, and then he had to take a life as with the head of a goat. And then the second birth, he came in that line of the second birth. He came in that line of the Manu and Uttanapada, Priyavrata, and then coming down. So Gaia came a lot later, but these personalities live many millions of years. They're not ordinary personalities. So they were able to come. I mean, some of the daughters of Daksha were married to Chandra, the moon god. And some were married to other demigods. So obviously, they're living with them in the heavenly planet. So they live a long time. So they were able to come for the ceremony. All right. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Jai Prabhupada ki jai.
His Holiness Ramai Swami I SB.
Jai.